So I went to watch Dhurandhar The Revenge in the theaters in its preview screenings with an absolutely hooting audience, and within all that noise and excitement, a sudden thought hit me, and it honestly kind of scared me. Because I believe a film like Dhurandhar serves a way bigger purpose that people are failing to see in hindsight, and is a preview to what Indian cinema will look like in the coming years. And if that's true, that's kind of concerning. Okay, so I know you read the title, I know you saw the thumbnail, so before you come with your pitchforks, let me just say this. This video is absolutely not about antagonizing Dhurandhar and calling it a propaganda cinema. That statement in itself requires a separate video essay to do it justice. This video doesn't concern itself with what political message the film is trying to give or what the director's personal beliefs are. And I'm more interested in what a film like Dhurandhar is actually doing to the wider landscape of Indian cinema itself. And I will be very honest with you, I watched Dhurandhar 1 in the theaters and honestly had a pretty fun time with it. Yeah, there were flaws, absolutely. And I had problems with way certain events and messages were portrayed, but I could never deny that it was a brilliantly directed and acted film. I think the best reference to this is what Anurag Kashyap wrote in his letterbox review for this film. I will put the review on screen, you can absolutely pause it and read it all if you like. But I want to specifically highlight this part where he says there are Oscar-winning propaganda films about the USA. And I ignored the two propaganda dialogues and loved the filmmaking and stubbornness of the filmmaker. So with that, I went to watch Dhurandhar 2. And I know there are a lot of things in this film that will create controversy and also a fan base. But that's not what I want to talk about in this video. So I'm very sure you will find hundreds of others addressing the same thing. I do not think people are asking the right questions when it comes to this movie. Now I know I've been talking about the subject very vaguely till now, but please allow me some time to set up some context, as it's very important. To understand what is happening with Indian cinema right now, we need to go back to the start of cinema itself. You see, when cinema was in its infant stage way back at the start of the 1900s, directors like Lumiere and Georges Méliès created some of the very first films ever made. Films that were not meant for narrative consumption, but rather for witnessing a spectacle. You really have to put yourself in the shoes of the people more than 100 years ago, who had never seen a moving image. So when they saw a train arriving at the station, playing on a larger-than-life screen in front of them, it was a matter of awe to them. These movies were termed the cinema of attractions, not interested in the narrative storytelling per se, but rather in the magic and spectacle of cinema itself. But the cinema we used to right now is termed cinema of narrative, which focuses on the cohesive story where every element serves the plot. And this is where all of cinema lies today. That's why films like Sholay are evergreen, because people remember the story and how it connected to them. But there is another side to this spectrum in Indian cinema, which can be illustrated with the example of Shah Rukh Khan's Dilwale. When it was released in 2015, people flocked to the theaters to catch the reunion of the iconic duo of King Khan and Kajol after years of them being separated on the silver screen. So here comes an interesting question. Are people going to see the film Dilwale's plot, or are they really going to see the stars SRK and Kajol on the big screen? You can argue for either side honestly, but the star power driven cinematic tendency of India is a really fascinating case to study, as it leans heavily towards the cinema of attractions part of history rather than the cinema of narrative. In the case of Dilwale, you can still argue that it is still a cinema of narrative, as people primarily went to see SRK and Kajol's characters' chemistry and the story on screen, which is still related to the narrative causality of the film. But this case study takes a wild turn just a few years later when star-driven cinema reinvents itself in the landscape of popular Indian cinema, with more focus on action. The advent of this came from South Indian cinema after the wild popularity of films like KGF, Bahubali and numerous others. This is interesting because now the attraction of these films were the stars themselves, and hence you see the invention of titles like Rocking Star Yash or Rebel Star Prabhas, after they gathered the unparalleled mass following that they did. This resulted in films that were less a celebration of the world portrayed in the film and more of a highlight reel-esque celebration of the stars who are portrayed like superheroes. So despite these films having plots, one wouldn't be too wrong to say that they are in the favor of providing the audience the spectacle of their favorite star performing physics-defying stunts on a larger-than-life screen. You see the start of the trend here, right? Also, I want to quickly address that I'm aware that star worshipping films were not founded at this time. It has always been the biggest part of popular Indian cinema since its advent. Indian cinema is run by a star system, but you do realize the role of a star, let's say Rajinikanth in the film like Robot, is much different to the same Rajinikanth in Jailer. But what happens after this is more interesting and also a tad bit concerning. You see, after the pandemic era, traditional hero worshipping films, though still pulling crazy box office numbers, were slowly but surely starting to gather some fatigue. So, what does the film industry do? They change their point of attraction. And here comes the crucial part. The star is no longer the attraction, the violence is. Of course, it will be very easy to start talking about animal in this segment, but it's really a wider issue. Even taking SRK's example again, a film like Pathan would simply not work in 2026. That formula has run its course. That's why even though Hrithik Roshan's War in 2090 was a box office mammoth, its sequel failed to leave any mark. And it's not the film's fault, it's just that the industry had slowly manipulated and taught its audience to appreciate another kind of film as the must-watch go-to-theatre experience. Films like Animal, Marco, Coolie, and even Dhurandhar are celebrated for their violence and gore. So much so that has become its attraction, the violence and the gore. Action sequences in these movies are specifically designed in a way to make the kills as grotesque as possible. And this is concerning because of one simple fact: action and gore are fundamentally two different things. Action is supposed to be thrilling, it's encapsulating, it's palpitating. But violence, and more specifically gore, is supposed to be repulsive. It's not something meant to be celebrated, but rather scared of. Naturally, gore has been the feature of horror films, and more specifically mainly slasher films like Halloween, Nightmare on the Elm Street, and even recent examples like the Terrifier franchise. So am I saying gore has no place in action? Well, no, absolutely not. One of my favorite action franchises of all time, John Wick, has plenty of gory kills in it, but the difference between a John Wick and an Animal is that the gore in John Wick is designed to make you flinch and look away from the screen, but in Animal, it is meant to get you up from your seats and cheer. It is a spectacle meant to be marveled at. But this isn't even the worst of the issue. That comes later, and actually now in 2026, when these gory action flicks are again starting to cause fatigue. And rightfully so, because think about it really. If every film is trying to show more blood and more intestines spilling on the floor than the last film, the audience will eventually become desensitized to it. So the industry is in a fix again. They have to reinvent the formula to fill the seats, and they have to create a new trend. So what do? And yeah, this is where I come to Dhurandhar, because I believe Dhurandhar 2 is one of the pioneers of this new trend that will carry Indian cinema for a while now. Let me explain. Uncensored, adult-rated content is the new trend. Now Dhurandhar has its narrative capabilities, but there is another side to the coin here too. If you go to Book My Show right now and go to the coming soon section, you will find countless A-rated films scheduled to release in the next few months. Specifically, I want to talk about Toxic, a fairy tale for adults. I mean, you don't have to look too far from the title of the film to see what's happening. A fairy tale for adults. Yep. Uncensored, mature themes. That's the trend. Now, this is interesting as well because if you really see the trailer of Toxic, it's not really adult content. It's almost like it's edging the audience by giving them a pseudo-adulterated sensual experience. The way I see these quote-unquote adult films are operating in the same formatic structure of, let's say, an item number in an Indian film. You see, item songs have always been a big part of Indian cinema, and it is very carefully and meticulously designed to give you a sense of a sensual experience, but in reality, it's just edging the audience with suggestive content. This is not nearly uncensorship, rather it's very smart censorship, but the suggestive nature of this type of censorship is exactly what they use to fool the audience. These hyper-violent films are portraying a superficial level of brutality, but in reality are carefully designed to show you nothing. And another thing you will notice in these films are the extraordinary long run times. Dhurandhar 2 runs for 4 hours itself, and I'm a firm believer that a film should run as long as it needs to. If Aditya Dhar felt the story of Dhurandhar 2 should not be told or could not be told in any less runtime than 4 hours, that's absolutely fine and valid. My problem is not with that. My problem is how this phenomenon of longer runtime theatrical releases is indirectly training the audience's mind. I can give an example from my personal experience here. I was talking with a friend as to whether he wants to see Dhurandhar 2 or another 2-hour film in the theatre. He said the ticket prices are the same for both, which was around 400 rupees. And he said, if I watch Dhurandhar 2, it's 4 hours long, right? So I will be getting 1 hour of the film for 100 rupees. But if I see the 2-hour film, I'm paying 200 rupees for 1 hour of film. And you can see this mentality is really widespread. People have started judging the value of their films by their runtime. They are like, the more the runtime the film has, the more value for money their ticket is. And to be very honest, in this economy, I see where that mindset is coming from, but you can also quickly see how problematic that is. Films are now judged the same as onions and tomatoes, by their quantity and not by their quality. It should be very clear that you are paying for the movie, not for the hours you are sitting in the AC in the theatre. A 2-hour film and a 4-hour film can be priced the same, but that doesn't mean you are getting a lesser value deal for paying for the 2-hour film. But that's the reality. People have started considering these big films as the go-to theatrical experiences and categorizing a quote-unquote shorter or a normal 2-hour film as something they can catch on the OTT later. So you can really see why a film like Rukh or Boom or even Payal Kapade's All We Mention Slide or hundreds of small independent films that release every month gets classified into this will watch at home later category. Films like this, which tell the story of the masses from the ground level, simply don't provide the spectacle to bring audiences into the theatre to experience something greater than themselves. So films with budget of 500 or even 600 crores, which are made by the elites of the society, gets classified as mass films, whereas films talking about the story of the masses gets labeled as art films. Forwarding my point regarding this, experiencing something bigger than yourselves, something you just won't find in your home. That's where the uncensored, adult-rated trend of new Indian popular cinema fits in quite perfectly. And another tactic I see these films doing is desperately trying to establish a cult status. And this comes from the MCUification of these films as well. You see, Dhurandhar 1 released in the theatre as its own theatrical cut, right? But when it was released on Netflix, it came with added scenes and an extended runtime. Now, many films do this, and it's a very common practice to release films on OTT with never before seen scenes. But they are slowly starting to take this one step further. You remember Bahubali the Epic, which was released as a 2-film cut into one experience in the theatres just a few months ago? I believe that was a better testing for a new release structure. So I wouldn't be too shocked to see a 6-hour Dhurandhar, the definitive edition cut, hitting the theatres in the next couple of years. Of course, that is just a fun speculation, but my broader point remains the same, which is a case study on the evolution of spectacle of Indian cinema. From stars to stunts to action to violence to gore, and finally now to pseudo uncensorship. And if this is truly where the landscape of popular Indian cinema is heading, I'm a bit scared of it, because all of this dictates to me as a panic button, a panic to increasingly serve audiences with heightened experiences and larger spectacles in a desperate attempt to keep them coming back to the theatres. But that's paradoxical, as the bigger the spectacle, the faster the desensitization. So what's next? What happens when people eventually stop caring for adult-rated shock value too? What more can they provide? What's the next spectacle? Honestly, I have no idea. But I do want to close this video off on a positive note, because I don't believe Indian cinema is doomed. On the contrary, there is a bright side to this. I believe demands for smaller, lifelike films like Nukkad Boom will resurface because of this. Now, I'm aware I'm using the examples of Nukkad and Boom because they are just recently released films, but there are hundreds of independent cinema coming out every month. And there is already increasing support shown for independent cinema like these, and the fatigue from the violence from the commercial landscape is forcing people to appreciate the silence in these soulful films. So if you're an independent creator, this is the best time to tell the most personal of stories, because trust me, there are people who are dying to hear it. And I also want to say I have nothing against this popular formulaic films. On the contrary, as I said in the beginning of the video, I do enjoy them and have massive respect for them. A genre of film that are designed to make you throw popcorn at the screen is very important for the survival of cinema, because it's meant to be fun, it's meant to be entertaining. My only critique and worry is the vessel of this entertainment, and I would absolutely love to hear your thoughts on this as well, so do leave a comment on the video. And I guess that's all for now. Thanks for watching.